Welcome to the very first episode of Recharged in 30. I'm your co-host Nafisa Akabor, owner of Recharged and freelance tech and EV journalist.
I'm your co-host Samina Anwari, and I work with news platforms and NGOs to get people to care about their stories.
The Recharged in 30 podcast has been a long time planning, but it wouldn't be possible without Naked. Hassle-free, instant online insurance. Naked Financial Technologies and authorized FSP.
Okay, let's get straight to it. For our first episode, we're talking about what we know best, being freelancers. More specifically, what tech and gig economy tools we use to keep what are essentially our small businesses running.
Let's start with hardware. Samina, what do you use on the daily to get work done? I mean, this could be your laptop, your cell phone, whether you have a tablet, any other gadget maybe that you take with you if you're working from anywhere else. The tech tools that you can't work without, basically.
Honestly, I only really use my laptop. I've been using a MacBook since, like 15 years now. I mostly started on that because I started in design, and that was like the industry favorite because the screen colors match printing so brilliantly. Now I barely do any printing work, but a lot of design still. And the closed system of Apple, which I don't like for other tools, I really love for just a laptop. And it gives me like the safety and the quality that I need, and the machine itself is also very dependable. So I've been using that for the longest time, and that is like my primary tech that I use. I'll talk more when we get to software.
Okay, wow, I'm actually quite impressed. You just have one main thing that you use.
What do you use most?
So I've been using, my MacBook is also my primary work device. I've been on Mac for about 16 years now, I'd say. So all my writing that I do has to be on my laptop. I'm not sure about you, but like, even though I have a tablet, I can't write from a tablet. Yes, I'll make notes maybe on the Notes app, but for me, I have to use my laptop to type. It's such a weird thing. It goes everywhere with me. And actually, the reason I bought a MacBook Air, it's because of the weight. It's actually one of the lightest laptops. And as you know, I actually do travel quite a bit, and I needed the weight to come off my shoulders. All those years ago, I started with a MacBook Pro, and I just felt it was too heavy. It was weighing me down. My shoulders used to get sore. So that's when I started looking for an alternative. I'm like, what's lighter? And the MacBook Air made the most sense. So yeah, I haven't looked back since I sold the Pro, and now I'm on Air. It's just been working great for me. But I think the Air is just like the perfect tool for me.
Okay, cool, amazing. I do find that people often take the more powerful machine thinking that they're going to need it for tools that they're probably not going to use. Another reason I use the MacBook Pro is because I use big programs, which again, I'll talk about a little bit later, but it requires the programs that require a powerful machine to use. Whereas if you're only using smaller programs, you don't have to use the most powerful machine.
That's so true, because when I get people who come to me to ask for advice, one of my first questions is, what are you going to use the laptop for? I'm obviously not off the bat going to say get a MacBook Pro because, it's Pro. I always check what they do. If it's similar to me being a writer, a freelance writer who just researches, reads, writes, that kind of thing, then the Air is actually perfect. The moment they say that they do heavy or intensive multimedia and video editing work, that's when I suggest the Pro. But yeah, apart from my laptop, most of you who follow me may know this, my iPhone or my main phone is another work tool. I actually call it a work tool because I do some paid work on social media, and I do all my video recordings on my phone. So for me, it's a very crucial thing to have the best tech tools for my business, as I like to call it. So yeah, the iPhone for me plays a very important role in what I do. I do trust it to shoot my videos, recording interviews when I'm abroad. Maybe I'm interviewing someone one-on-one. Even when it comes to editing photos and videos, I actually do a lot of this on my iPhone rather. I find that also the audio quality is a bit better. I'm not here obviously to trash any Android brand. I use Android myself, but there was an instance where I was in an international conference. I decided to use the Android phone I had on test to record the audio, and it picked up all the background sound. So it was a bit of a nightmare for me. You can imagine like not being able to hear properly. So since that incident, I feel like it's a bit risky to try another one. So I stick to iPhone purely for that reason, because I know the audio isolation, it's quite good in that. So yeah, I prefer that. And then the last thing I use, but I don't want to call it a primary work tool. It is my iPad. It's more an entertainment device. But lately, I found that if I'm attending an event and my laptop is a bit heavier, and if I just want to carry a smaller bag, the iPad actually fits perfectly because I can record all my interviews from the iPad. So I've been using it more in that sense as a work tool, which I never thought I would do.
Oh, that's quite impressive, actually. And it's interesting that your use of tech has also changed over time. So, what you might have been using a couple of years ago, you might not be using exclusively or at all anymore.
Yeah, because it's funny, years ago I used to be like, oh, an iPad, nobody ever needs one. And it's always an entertainment device. Or if you need to go on a plane and you want some entertainment, then that's when you do it. But now, yeah, I feel like, look at me, I'm now using it for work. So you never say never. You don't know how the tech changes and how easy it is now to just work from anywhere using any device.
Yeah, that's so wild. It's really not set in stone. So let's talk a little bit about the software that you use.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, I've been using a MacBook for almost 16 years now. And back then when I first started, I know it's going to sound weird, but like I couldn't get rid of my Microsoft software. So I love my Word and Excel and those kind of things. And I was like, no, I absolutely can't switch to Apple's Pages. I tried it and I just didn't like it. So since then, I have been using Office for Mac. I'm sure people, if you're listening, you might be familiar that obviously there is a dedicated platform that Microsoft makes for the MacBook. So I was using that for the longest time. Then I switched to the software where annually, it's now called Microsoft 365. I'm not sure, Samina, if you're familiar with it.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I buy an annual subscription and that's my main driver for work. I sit and use it. It gives me access to all the Word, Excel, PowerPoint, whatever I need. And it also gives me access to cloud services, which I'll touch on a bit later. Yeah, so I can't live without those. I can log in from my phone or from my laptop because of the cloud aspect and why I'm using it. And it also gives you the latest features. If you had to buy like software where you install it, you're now stuck with that software for 4 years until a new update comes. As far as I understand, that's how it works. And another piece of software, which if anyone's listening and they are in the similar space, media or journalism, it's called Otter. It's a live transcription tool. I cannot tell you how this changed my life. I remember spending hours transcribing interviews and it was the biggest pain. Now that, Otter really changed the game. I'm on the free version, which gives you about 300 minutes a month, but it actually caps you at 30 minutes per recording. It used to be 40 minutes, a bit sneaky. Obviously, they're trying to get you to pay for more. But I try and look in advance and see when it's nearing the 30-minute mark and I sort of re-record. But this has been, I won't use the term game changer lightly, but that's what this tool has been for me. It's so much easier to refer back to my notes when I'm writing a story. It gives everything. And I find the accuracy quite up there, I mean, I have used other software, which now I wouldn't even go back to because of the accuracy of Otter. I'm not sure if you have used it or you're familiar with it, maybe?
So I've never used it myself, but I've had colleagues use it and they're not technically journalists either. So any work that you do that involves interviewing people and transcription has always been such a nightmare in any interview field. So it makes a huge change. And they also commented on like how brilliant the quality was.
Yeah. And other software I'm excited to mention is actually my cloud backups or like just cloud stuff. I use at least 4 cloud services.
4 clouds. Why would you need 4?
So I use, because of the platforms and devices I use, I'm going to go into each one of them. So iCloud, obviously, naturally, I am an Apple user. So my whole iPhone and MacBook gets backed up to iCloud every night. So I don't know whether if anyone uses MacBook or even use Samina, you can have an iCloud desktop. So everything you stick on your desktop becomes an iCloud desktop. So that's what I tend to do. Any documents I have on there, I can access from my phone or, when you access the files folder. And same with my phone, everything backs up. So for me as a freelance journalist, I don't have I don't work for one company who looks after me. I have to look after myself. So if you think about it, in case something happens, my hard drive fails or my phone gets stolen or it breaks or my screen cracks and I'm out, I need my stuff on the cloud. So those are like crucial ones. And the second one I use is Dropbox. I mean, I know there has been some controversy around it over the years and privacy and them deleting files, but the way I use it, it's just to file my work images. Like, I mean, when you're working with multimedia content, it's large files. So I stick all my high-res images for my stories into the Dropbox folder, and that's how I file it. So a month later, I just delete it.
Oh, amazing.
Not sure if you use Dropbox or you're familiar with it.
I have used it in the past, but I am primarily a Google Drive girl. Even though I use a Mac, I don't actually use any of the storage, but I think that's because I'm a native Android user. So I use Drive on my phone, and then so I use the same on my laptop, which is super helpful to have like a primary space where, especially if you're trying to send things over WhatsApp and you need to transfer it to your phone, it's easier to transfer between Google Drive than have to switch between different cloud services. So that really is helpful for me if I need to send things like small social media graphics, etc., to clients to quickly have a look over. Having a single like storage space for me is much more helpful. But like this is so great because then we have different ways of using tools, which is interesting.
Actually, Google Drive is my third cloud service that I use. You know that I'm testing Android and iPhone. I've always have devices. So the quickest way to get access to those data and photos between devices is, of course, Google Drive. I think we've also been sharing content with each other, right, for this podcast.
Actually, we've been using Google tools to do that.
Exactly.
And that's also another reason I end up using theirs, because I, again, don't pay for the Microsoft 365 because I end up using the Google Docs, slides, etc. tools, which also had its own controversy around gathering people's information from their docs and then feeding it into like AI, which has been like a very interesting thing to watch unfold. But they've become such essential tools, and some of them are really, really great to be able to use to share information.
Yeah, and the last cloud service I use is OneDrive. The reason I use it is I get 1 terabyte of storage every month from my Microsoft 365 account. So this is like compatible on all devices. I just stick a OneDrive folder on every device I have, and I just put everything there. I just dump everything on it because I know I have the space. 1 terabyte is a lot. So I think, that also helps me. And I also pay for Photoshop to edit my images. I mean, I'm not like you. I'm in no level near your multimedia skills, but I just use it for very basic stuff to do my work. And Google Workspace for my professional email accounts. Like, for example, my professional email editor at nafisa.co.za, some people may be aware, and my new recharged email accounts, I actually use Google Workspace, and I pay for those email options. I think it's really a good investment to host with Google because it's exactly like a Gmail interface, and it gives you all those benefits.
Oh, that's really helpful, especially for anyone who's starting like a new project or needing, like coordinated email addresses across their company. That would be really helpful.
Yeah, you just pay per user, and you can also actually under one user have an alias, which is kind of helpful. So if I want to create a Win at Recharged account, I can just add it to another one. But if I want to create a separate account like the one you and I have for this podcast, then that's a separate user, so we both have access to it.
Oh, amazing. Okay. So we've spoken a little bit about software. Is there anything else that you still want to talk about software-wise?
Software-wise, I think all the cloud services I just mentioned, if you are a small business or freelancer listening out, I think you should consider a backup for your backup. And that's the reason why I have so many. You can't just trust one device. I mean, if your one device, you were logged in and everything went down or you lost information, I think it's just safe to make copies of everything. Never just have one copy. I mean, we all know that's the golden rule. So I think, if you don't want to lose any of your business information, and you shouldn't rely on social media only to have access to anything business related. I mean, I did a course with a makeup artist a while back, and she actually lost all her PDFs. She said she couldn't send it to me because she lost access to her stuff. And my first thought was, wow, you don't back that up to the cloud. So, I mean, if you are a small business and you have tools and kits that you send out, I think it's very crucial to stick them on multiple of your cloud services.
At the beginning of this conversation, I thought it was wild that you use 4 different cloud storage platforms, but now it seems kind of essential because like you said, you don't actually know what could happen. And also it makes sense if you're using all these tools and they provide cloud storage, you might as well maximize all the platforms that provide them. Because now you've got Apple, Google,
right, Microsoft,
and that
Dropbox.
Dropbox. It's super helpful. Okay, I haven't yet spoken about my software?
Yes, I just know you use Google Drive.
Yes. So the software I use is more related to the work that I do in terms of like actual, like, creative tools. So one that I'm a big fan of, and anyone who's ever heard me say 5 sentences would have heard that I really love Canva. It's actually overtaken my Photoshop subscription. I actually don't subscribe to Photoshop.
Wow.
Partly because I don't really use the tool as much anymore. It's not that, that you can replace Photoshop with Canva. You cannot. But for what I was using it for, Canva became my primary tool, and I also subscribe to Adobe InDesign. So Canva I use for a lot of social media content creation, and when I mostly switched over to doing it in that app, it was because there was a lot of functionality in Canva that Photoshop would force me to do manually. So like background removal or things like that, like on images. It became much easier to do on Canva than to do on Photoshop. InDesign I still use because if I'm designing people's like annual reports or things like that, books, you still need those tools that InDesign provides to be able to lay out long documents, whereas Canva is good for like shorter, single or like, a couple different frames. Or
You did say you pay for Canva, right?
I do.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Canva comes to about 1,000 Rand for the year,
Oh, okay.
which is super worth it because I use it for almost everything. And also they update their tools all the time. Almost every time I open it, there's like something new to try, which is what I really love. And the thing that makes Canva really great for me is that it makes it much easier for people who aren't designers by profession to be able to design their own stuff. And I'm a big fan of democratization of skills. So Canva for me is a really big example of that.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, actually, I wanted to touch on invoicing. I'm not sure what you use or what you've been doing. I just use Excel, and I know there's a whole bunch of templates. I'm sure if anyone's listening, you know that Microsoft gives you a bunch of templates for a lot of things. And I actually went in there and I found a template for invoicing, which I really liked. And I've been using it ever since. I just export to PDF where, if someone requests that I send an invoice on PDF. But I think one of the tips I can give for invoicing, I always ask the company what needs to appear on the invoice before I send it, because in the past I've learned the hard way, a hard lesson, that once I send the invoice, 30 days later they come back and say, oh, this information is missing. So to avoid that, and you know what it's like for freelancers, it's like we always have to beg to be paid, right?
Yeah, I've had that happen to me as well.
Yeah, so to avoid that, I kind of ask upfront, hey, about to send the invoice. Is there anything you need that that has to appear as a priority on this thing? Please let me know before. So yeah, I think I just use Excel and export to PDF. And yeah, I don't pay for any accounting software actually.
Okay. Yeah. Now I know that there are different types of software out there, but I also just lay my invoices out manually. But I think there are other tools that exist out there. Maybe you guys can tell us what your favorite invoicing tools are, and maybe we could have a look at them. It would be interesting to see what's out there.
Definitely.
So a huge part of promoting your business is social. What's your experience been of?
So with my own social media experience, I think over the years I've shared openly on my socials that I try not to rely on social media. I mean, we all know how these companies chop and change their policies. They change their algorithms. You cannot invest in these platforms too much because you will get burnt. I think once I realized social is not my main thing, I'm very happily have my own platforms. As you know, I'm big on having your own website, your own space on the internet, something that's self-hosted. One day, if, just say one of the big social media networks go down for 24 hours, and if you're running your business on there, then what do? You just have to be offline, you can't be reachable. So it's that kind of thing that made me realize not to rely on social. So therefore, it's actually not... it's a secondary thing to me. Sure, I'll use it to promote, and then to my own recharge page. It's not as active as I want it to be. I mean, obviously I do have a lot of social media pages, but I try not to rely on it basically. And I think if you are a small business or you're starting out, it's great to promote yourself on social, don't get me wrong, but don't make it the only thing that you use to run your business. I've encountered a small business in the past where she was very frantic and came to me. She accidentally clicked a link, how in the DMs, and her account got taken over and eventually deleted, but she was selling products and all her client base was on her social media, on her Instagram. It was actually quite a nightmare. I felt really bad for her, but then I realized, but that's when you realize you can't rely on social media. She lost contact numbers, orders that people have placed. So that's a very good example of why you shouldn't rely on social media.
Oh my goodness, that is such an intense experience. Imagine losing all of your customers that were in your DMs. Like, that's where you were engaging with them.
Exactly. I can't even begin to explain. So yeah, if you are in the space, just keep a backup. I mean, sure, if you want to run your business on Instagram, for example, just create an Excel document, put your customers' names, email address, contact details, just ask them for it. Or if they even share their number when you shipping a product, maybe you can just keep their details on your document on some kind of backup system. But yeah, I think since last year and this year, I've been trying new things. We all know, as we've just said, you can't rely on one platform. So I've been trying what it's like to do is just send a newsletter out. It's new. I'm still kind of new to it, I think.
Your newsletter is really great. Anyone
so
who
much.
hasn't read it yet, please read it. It's such a great newsletter.
Thank you. Yeah, I am trying to improve it all the time. I mean, obviously we know that people, they don't always open newsletters. It's one of the most annoying things on your inbox, I think. So I try to make it useful by sharing tips. So I always hope there's something new or different for people on my newsletter. And then I've also been playing with WhatsApp channels from last year. I've grown my following quite a bit, and I try to share links to my stories. So I think for me, it's about reaching audiences in different platforms. So yes, there's a whole bunch of people who use WhatsApp and they prefer that, then great. People who prefer a condensed newsletter because they don't have time to sit on socials, then they can catch up with my work and what I've been doing there. And then I've also been playing a little bit more on LinkedIn since, I want to say, the demise of Twitter or X. So yeah, I created a company profile on LinkedIn to share more of my content there. So I think just a mix of that. And then I don't know about you, but Threads is not that much a big deal for me. But now and then I'll open it and maybe share stuff. But I do try to keep, I would say, a healthy mix between all the platforms to share my stuff without relying on one too much.
I think that's really great advice. And also, like with the buying the most powerful MacBook when you don't need to have the most powerful MacBook and the most expensive, you can also just be on the platforms that work for you. You don't have to be everywhere all at once. You can choose platforms that work for you. And some that worked at some point might not work later on. So it really is a work in progress. But I fully agree with you on the creating a database of clients and creating your own database that you have access to with people's details. Because also an important part of having a small business, or even if it's a freelance business, is to grow a client base and grow a community through the people who you interact with and the people who buy your product and who you provide services to. You want to form a community that you can interact with and like communicate with regularly, even as a whole. So having a newsletter, having a website, having your own home base online is very important that you have control over. I can't emphasize that enough. There have been instances where news organizations have only been promoting a whole media product on one platform. And then the platform changes how they run their algorithm. They change what counts as a view, etc. And then you're at sea again because you're completely dependent on something out of your hands. So just want to emphasize, definitely do that. It's such a good idea. And you have access to yourself.
Actually, I'm even on TikTok. I mean, I've been called TikTok Tani. I don't know whether you remember in lockdown. But I also think I like playing around with TikTok. I find the interactions and the engagement much higher than Instagram. I'm sure you've noticed you also use TikTok quite a bit. So I think TikTok allows me to be a bit more creative and be concise with the content I share. And it's also made me come out of my shell in a way to record more videos. So I'm really actually enjoying that quite a bit.
Nice, yeah. It is, and it's nice to have alternative platforms. I think TikTok does require a bit more like bravery, but it really does reap rewards once you put a bit of time into it.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Samina, this has been quite an insightful first episode. I feel like we've touched on quite a bit. And to all our listeners, I hope whether you work for yourself or run a small business, you found this information useful and it will help you in your journey.
Yeah, I can't believe it. The time really has flown. And if you have any questions about what we've discussed or just general feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Don't forget that as a freelance or small business owner, you can use the Naked Insurance app or website to get a quote for your tech tools in 90 seconds without a single phone call.